Well, here we are at our third and final interactive educational session today on caregiving. This session is entitled Enabling versus Empowering, and will be presented by two great people from the Albuquerque VA Medical Center. Trudi Valdez is an experienced and popular visual impairment services team coordinator of some 9 years. She was at the VA before that as a social worker. As I understand it, was all in Albuquerque. She's also the Albuquerque VA's former prisoner of war program advocate. Trudi's joined by Kelly Golden. Kelly's the blind rehabilitation outpatient specialist in Albuquerque, and Kelly's worked in blind rehabilitation for 30 years. 12 years with the VA in both Spokane and in Albuquerque. She has a master's degree in blind rehabilitation and is certified in low vision therapy, vision rehabilitation therapy, and orientation and mobility. She's presented and trained many groups working with the visually impaired. So Trudi and Kelly have indicated that they would like this session to be as interactive as possible, and your participation is a priority. We'd like you guys to just be patient though and wait until there's until they indicate that it's time to ask questions, or until the end, just so that we don't have like a lot of interruptions right during the presentation. And once again, if you haven't been on the other sessions, the best way for that to happen is for the audience to use the raise hand function in the Zoom platform. And Charles will acknowledge the raised hand and let you know that you'll be unmuted to verbally ask the question. You can also use the chat function or the Q&A function to type out the question if you want us to ask it for you, if you feel more comfortable doing that, or if it's just more convenient. So without further delay, I think you can go ahead and take it away, Trudi and Kelly.
Okay, I'm Trudi. Hi, welcome today. Today, Kelly and I are presenting on enabling versus empowering. So what we're doing is really exploring what the natural tendency of caregivers is to become enablers, and also empowerment, which is the focus of what we want for our visually impaired and blinded veterans so that they achieve their maximum independent potential. So what is a caregiver? A caregiver provides assistance to help somebody with their social and healthcare needs. It can be an unpaid caregiver. It can be an unpaid caregiver, which might be a spouse, an adult child, another family member, or it can be a paid caregiver that comes to help the veteran. Caregiving can include everything from helping this person with their activities of daily living, such as bathing, dressing, personal care, paying bills, shopping, transporting to appointments, and wherever else they might need to go. And we know that caregivers' responsibilities always increase at the changing health and visual needs of the person. According to the Center for Disease Control, most caregivers are middle-aged or older adults who are caring for their children, their parents, or their spouses. And we know through our program, through the Visual Impairment Services and Blind Rehabilitation Program, that caregivers are an integral part of our programs. Very important. So just to clarify, so when we say enable, the definition of enable is to make able, give power, means competence. An example of that would be providing visually impaired and blinded veterans with magnifiers and screen reader software so that it enables them to read. So you might hear enable and empower interchanged because they mean a lot the same. But what we're talking about today is enabling. And enabling more is encouraging or supporting behaviors that aren't necessarily beneficial to our visually impaired or blinded veterans. So example, the caregivers enabling the visually impaired or blinded veteran by doing everything for them and not allowing them to use the skills and devices that they've received through their blind rehab programs. Where'd it go? Okay, sorry, I lost my arrow. Okay. So some other examples of enabling might be, say, for instance, a veteran's home by themselves and they get hungry, so they go to the kitchen and they make themselves a sandwich. But when their caregiver gets home, and the veteran might say, hey, I'm hungry, the caregiver automatically makes the sandwich for them, even though they know the veteran is perfectly capable of doing that on their own. Another one would be maybe while a veteran goes to a blind rehab center, they learn how to do their laundry independently, and they do it the whole time that they're there at the center. But once they get home, they fall back into the same thing of allowing the caregiver to do their laundry for them. And the caregiver does it knowing that they're perfectly capable of doing it on their own. So those are just some examples that of enabling. So why does enabling occur? Enabling generally occurs because the caregiver has a desire to help and care for their loved ones. We don't like to see our loved ones struggle. We have the best of intentions when we're trying to help our loved ones or veterans that we may be working with. And we don't even realize that we're enabling that person. So here's some things to ask. Ask yourself, could you be enabling your loved one or the person that you're caring for? The first one is, do you do things for the veteran to make life easier for them? And what we're talking about is if a visually impaired or blinded veteran struggles to complete a task and you see that, do you start doing it for them so you don't have to watch that happen? You don't want them to be upset, become agitated, frustrated when they're trying to do something, so you just go ahead and do it for them. You're doing things again for the veteran that they're able to do on their own. Or another one might be, do you make excuses for the veteran if somebody questions that? And as a VIST coordinator, I see that quite often. Actually, I'll be talking to a veteran and his caregiver, and I'll ask the veteran, are you able to make coffee? And the veteran will say, no, because my wife does it for me, or my caregiver does it for me. So by doing those things, even though the veteran has worked with the programs, the caregiver is still doing it for them. One of the things that you might realize as a caregiver is that you're really just becoming exhausted with the caregiving responsibility. It's just overwhelming. You're having to put your needs aside, things that you need to do, because you're spending all of your time caring for this person. Some of the reasons that caregivers enable. One might be guilt, guilt that the veteran has lost their vision, fear of judgment from others, because you're encouraging your visually impaired or blinded veteran to do things on their own, and others might see that and be judgmental or criticize you for making them do those things, or, you know, expecting that they do some of these things on their own. A lot of times as a caregiver, you realize that, hey, it's much faster and easier for me to get this task done rather than have the blinded veteran do it, because it might take them longer, or you know, they might struggle with it. So you just go ahead and do it to get it done because you have other things that need to get done. The caregiver often does the task to protect the veteran from becoming frustrated and angered. So that's something we talked about just a few minutes ago. You know, we're always trying to protect and make things easier for our loved one. Some of the outcomes of enabling our visually impaired and legally blind veterans is it changes that relationship dynamic. So instead of having a husband and wife, it turns into maybe the caregiver and husband, or the wife and caregiver. It changes the whole relationship there. Oftentimes the caregiver feels like they can't express their needs to the visually impaired or blinded veteran because they're supposed to be there to care for them. It often leaves the visually impaired or blinded veteran unprepared or ill-equipped in situations that may occur. If we don't allow our veteran to do the things that they've learned through their blind rehab programs, then what happens if maybe you're not there? Maybe you run to the grocery store and something happens. How is the veteran going to handle that situation? Okay. It also has an adverse effect on the caregiver, their physical and mental health, because the caregiver once again is doing everything and really overextending themselves when that's not something that they need to be doing. And sometimes it can also lead to caregiver resentment, which that's not something that we don't want to see that. So, enabling our visually impaired or blinded veteran ultimately is not helpful for either party, not the caregiver or the veteran, because it usually makes them dependent on the caregiver, and it also makes them less motivated to be independent and do those things on their own.
Okay. This is Kelly. I'm going to speak on empowering, and that's what our blind rehab programs do, is they empower our veterans to be independent, to change their lives so they can accomplish the things they'd like to. So the definition of empowering is the authority or power given to someone to do something, the process of becoming stronger and more confident. And that's especially in taking back the control of your life and in saying, I have the right to do these things. So some of the examples would be the veterans who participate in the visually impaired and blinded veterans programs. They're empowered to become independent by using the skills and the equipment. An example would be that someone's issued a talking watch and instructed on how to use that. So now they don't always have to ask someone what time it is. So we empower our veterans by providing them with the tools that they need, teaching them the skills that they need to accomplish certain things, such as walking safely or dialing the phone. So if something does happen, if their caregiver's gone, they can call 911. We encourage them to use the tools that they're given. And a lot of times I'll go into the home and they'll just put those things away, saying it's easier if I don't do this task. So then we have to get everything back out and review how to use them. And practice makes perfect. So we really encourage them to use all of those tools and to keep practicing so they don't lose the skills that they learned. We also provide support and resources, and we help them access those resources. So for instance, if they have difficulties getting transportation and they're not in an area where transportation is available, Trudi and I can help them sign up for the local Sun Van or different transportation, teach them how to use the bus. So then they're able to use their phone to call and schedule that, travel independently to their appointments where they're going, whatever they may need. We're their cheerleaders, so we're always there encouraging them to use those skills. So empowerment improves people's sense of self-worth. A lot of times we'll go in and people may be depressed because they can't accomplish some of the tasks that they used to do easily. And again, they'll say it's easier for me to just quit doing that than to struggle and take hours trying to read a letter. By empowering them, we can improve their sense of control over their life, that they have the confidence and the ability to accomplish that task. It decreases isolation because it improves both their mood and their outlook. So by taking steps to become more self-reliant, they're maybe looking for things to stretch beyond what they normally would do, like attend the support groups. It also increases their self-esteem and their identity as a person because it gives them back, I can do things again. It increases their hope, gives them a positive outlook, gives them self-determination, and also a sense of accomplishment when they're able to set goals and accomplish those goals. So we can empower the caregiver, or how the caregiver can empower the veteran. So the first step is to contact a VIST coordinator and to get set up with the VA programs. If you're already enrolled with the VIST program, the VIST coordinator and all the programs are there for your lifetime, basically. So anything you may need from the beginning to the end, we're there for you. So always encourage participation in the VA blind rehab services. We have a lot of veterans that we work with that refuse to attend a BRC, to the blind rehab center. And so we just kind of encourage them. Finally, they may attend and they'll come back and say, that was the best thing I've ever done. I should have done it a long time ago. It actually changes their life and their outlook on life. You can also help the visually impaired and the blinded veteran to learn skills or practice the skills learned so they may solve their own problem and accomplish tasks. So one of the biggest things I will do going into people's homes and teaching them is I'll teach them, we'll work with it, and then their spouse or their children may be there and they'll watch them demonstrating the skills learned, and they'll want to step in and help them. But I always say step back and let them make mistakes and figure out how to accomplish that task without giving up. And we also can provide resources to empower the veteran to succeed. So that would be setting up a work area in the home so they can use their computer and their CCTV and take their time to do that so they don't feel rushed through and distracted. We're going to start small and work into bigger things. And an example of that would be a gentleman who started learning mobility skills, and then he branched out. He wanted to obtain a dog guide, and he did, and he has literally changed his life. He's lost a ton of weight. His mood is better. He's traveling all over on the bus, getting all by himself. And so his whole attitude has changed. He's blossomed, and it's awesome. And then remember that the visual impairment services team and the blind rehab programs are always available to empower and support both the veteran and their caregivers. Thank you very much for letting us have the opportunity to chat with you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions?
Okay, we have one from the question and answer. William Mathis asks, is there mental health support for the caregiver?
Absolutely. We do have caregiver support meetings that are held here at the VA regularly. We have a weekly, and then there's also monthly caregiver support meetings held.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, because of COVID right now, some of the programs are not being held, but there are some that are being done via the Video Connect.
Yeah. And what I also find helpful is I have some simulator goggles, and I like to have the caregiver and the family, whoever's involved with this person, put those goggles on so they can actually experience what the visually impaired are seeing. And when they do that, they have a whole new outlook. So I'll have them put them on, try to read something, try to walk, try to identify money. You know, there's things that people don't think about when they don't experience it. So with those goggles, that kind of changes the perspective a little bit too.
Yeah, gives them a better understanding of what the veteran's going through.
Tracy Farrell has a question. If you can unmute yourself, Tracy.
Unmute my audio.
Okay, you got me
Mute
now?
my audio. Shift Command A.
You.
Okay. I was just wondering because a lot of times when I'm working with the veterans, and I volunteer with the BVA and the VA down there in Biloxi, you know, you were talking about empowering, and if a person knows how to, for example, if I know how to use the iPhone and put you into my contacts and type it all in and everything else, yeah, I can do it. I know how to do it. And as long as my veterans know how to do it, if they give the phone to somebody that's sighted and say, listen, this is going to be quicker, easier, and faster, I can do it. It's just easier to come that way. I don't really think that's empowering or anything, as long as they're aware that they need to know how to do this specific task. For example, magically my laundry gets done. Now I know that magic is my wife, and I know how to do it. I just she's better at it, and we do it together. And so I think sometimes, you know, we look at the empowering. We got to be careful as far as you know, if they know and it's not really empowering them or stuff. Does that make sense?
Well, we couldn't hear half of what you had said because you were kind of cutting out. Is he there?
Can we maybe, can we get Tracy back on and actually try to
I'm still here.
ask that again?
I had to
Just
do
kind of
this-
clarify what you were going to say, what you were saying.
Me?
Yeah, apparently you cut out a little bit. You didn't on our end, but you did on theirs. Can you kind of just rephrase that a little bit and maybe a little bit shorter? I think they said they only caught about half of it.
Okay, I was just talking about empowering. A lot of times, as long as a veteran knows what the task is and how to accomplish the task, if a sighted person does it, as in their caregiver and everything, I don't really think it's too much of an empowering type thing. It's, you know, it's a healthy relationship. My wife and I have one. I do all the cooking. She does all the dishwashing. I can wash dishes. She can cook. You know, so it's not a question of not knowing how sometimes. Sometimes it's as long as a person knows how, I think it's acceptable.
Right, and I agree with that. The problem is that some of our people may kind of go backwards and say, well, it's easier for them to do it. So what we're talking about is making sure they can do it, giving them the chance to do it, and not doing it 100% of the time. So your situation is different.
And a lot of the veterans and their spouses, well, I would say most probably, they have kind of maybe self-defined responsibilities, like maybe the wife cooks and the husband does the dishes, that kind of thing. That's not the same. That's not what we were aiming at right here with the empowering.
We have a question from Patricia. If you can unmute yourself.
Hi. The big thing I think is called communication. If the caregiver and the veteran communicate on a real, hey, I need some help with this, or it's okay if you take some time and do something. It's to share responsibilities is not the difference between enabling and empowering, but it is something that you need to communicate in, because as the blindness or other factors change the need for the caregiving, the veteran and the caregiver need to communicate what are my real needs and why, and discuss a solution so that you continue to empower.
Well said.
We have another question from Gerald. If you can unmute yourself. Harold?
Alert, audio now unmuted. Lower hand button L.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay, great. I've been sitting here for all 3 meetings. What I heard was really good, but it seemed like it was all directed to those who have low vision. I heard very, very little about those of us who are totally blind. And with the caretaking thing, all I basically heard is someone's spouse, someone's loved one. There are those of us who don't have that option and have to deal with somebody
Alert, hand
that's
now lowered.
hired.
Raise hand button R.
Can you explain to me why there's so much emphasis on the low vision and not as much on total loss of vision?
Well, that was not intended. That when we said visually impaired and blinded veteran, we're focusing on all levels of vision loss. It wasn't intended to be a focus specifically for low vision or.
Well, it wasn't so much you. It was the other 2 meetings. It just seemed like it was just solely for those who were low vision.
Right. Well, as the bros here in New Mexico, I work with both people who have some vision left and those who are totally blind. And the same goes for, both and how I look at things, because those people attend the blind rehab centers or they receive training from a bros or whoever they need training from. So we're still teaching you the skills, and we still expect that you're going to use those skills so you're independent. And a lot of people that I work with don't even have a caregiver. So they're self-reliant. They're able to go out and do those things. And if they have difficulties doing that, then they have the skills that they're able to find help to assist them with that. Does that answer anything for you?
Well, somewhat. I'm just disappointed that the first 2 meetings and stuff, it just solely sounded like it was for low vision. I mean, I sat here, I listened through the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Not so much YouTube, but just the way this was set up and what was talked about. I was disappointed.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about those veterans who are totally blind, who don't have a spouse or an adult child or someone to help them. You might have a paid caregiver through that you pay on your own, or you may be involved with one of the caregiver programs where you have someone come over to help you. And through the visual impairment services here in New Mexico, and I'm sure it works pretty well the same throughout, Kelly and I also work with that paid caregiver or other person, whoever it might be, to learn to help the veteran, because many of those caregivers do not have experience working with blind veterans. They just don't have that experience. So we work with them to help the caregivers to be able to help the veteran.
Are there any other questions?
And another thing I want to add in is, because of this COVID craziness, this is what we had to do for this. So we're very honored that we were a part of this, because normally we're at the conference and we're doing hands-on participation with the people there. So this is different for everybody. Nobody knew what to expect. And I think that it's went very well. And I thank you for including us in on this.
Yes, thank you.
We have one more question from Tricia. If you can unmute yourself.
Well, it's actually from her husband. This is Ray Hale. We all have, we're individuals, and we all, I guess, have a different take on what's going on. I'm frankly thankful for everything I heard today, but I tend to try to look at, and when I work with fellow vets, to look at, hey, what's there to help you accomplish the task you're interested in. Obviously, there's a bucket list of things that maybe you ought to stick aside and replace it with things you can do. And one of the things I try to focus on is my wife. I love her. She's not my caregiver, and I don't want her to be my caregiver. If she can assist me with something, and I can assist her, it's kind of a trade-off, but I got to find out. I've had to do a lot of figuring out of, well, we travel a lot, and for me, guide dogs work really well. And when I try to walk without a cane or a dog, I get hurt. But my main focus, my main objective is to have some normalcy in my personal life, and my wife wasn't put here to be my caregiver, but she helps a lot, and giving her knowledge, empowering her with the knowledge of how to help me do that, those things is what's important in our house, and vice versa, what I can do to help her. So
That sounds wonderful, and it sounds like you and your wife have very good communication skills. So you could talk about things and make those decisions, work together as a team.
I do everything she tells me to do. But no, the program and what's available out there through our programs is just excellent. It's just accessing, not being afraid to access and look, but don't for a minute think that everything out there's got to be in your toolkit to do things, because it'll overwhelm you, and you don't need most of it. But the next person may obviously need something that you don't need at the moment. So, but anyway, thank you all.
Thank you, Ray.
Thank you.
Do we have any more questions? We still have a few more minutes left. If anybody can come up with a question, this is a great opportunity we just don't have these opportunities very often.
Thomas Doyle has a question. Thomas, if you can unmute yourself. Okay. Thomas,
Yes, can you hear me?
we can.
Oh, okay. I'm totally blind, and the previous people calling in mim- mimic my situation with my wife and myself. I want to know, is there an advantage to me going to see the coordinator at the VA hospital and try and register my wife as my caregiver? We're in that situation where we work together and everything, but and my coordinator knows my wife because we go to all the support group meetings, but we never have seen a caregiver coordinator. Is there an advantage to registering her as my caregiver?
I think absolutely yes. The answer is yes, because that makes more resources as far as support goes for the caregiver. And because of the changes in the caregiver program, it could provide more opportunities.
Okay, thank you very much. And
Thank you.
Stuart, it's nice to have you back in the BVA group.
Thank you, Tom.
Paul Mims, you have a question? If you can unmute yourself.
Okay, there I am. I think I'm unmuted now.
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. A couple of times, guide and service dogs have been mentioned, and I will just say that there is an increasing amount of information that's going to be available on the BVA website, and I will, hopefully there will be support from the auxiliary and other caregiver resource managers, pointing people to that, and that we will be able to give people the ability to make an informed decision about a guide or service dog before they get all, totally convinced that that's the key to their life. And so, again, it's a resource that, BVA now has, and we hope that people will avail themselves of that, including being able to ask members questions. We have a monthly meeting that's open to anybody, and we're trying to take our website link now and put the meeting information up there and invite you to send an email to us that hold the group so that we can notify you of meetings and other information that we get between meetings, all of which is education, information, and leads to support, which is what we're all talking about here. So I would just say, look on the BVA website at the bottom, and there are, special interest groups, the women veterans. There's also one for BVA dog owners or dog users. And the idea of a dog can be empowering. It can also be frustrating. So you need to be ready for it. And information is going to help, rather than just saying, well, that's what I'm going to do. And then you start doing it. And then you find out that it's a bigger bite than you really can chew. But that doesn't mean that there aren't other options for people having dogs in their lives, because dogs are calmers.
Yes.
Cats are chaos drivers. And so I just hope people will look at that information and get in touch with us if you have questions, because between me, Ray, and some others, we've got answers.
Thank you. Good
You're
to know.
welcome.
I did not know that.
Okay.
Tracy Farrell had a comment for this question caregiving is great for access to bases. I believe he's speaking about the new regulation that came out 1 January, allowing caregivers and disabled veterans on base access and privileges on bases.
Can you comment on that at all, Kelly and Trudi?
We didn't hear anything.
You didn't really hear that.
No.
Charles, can you repeat that or paraphrase it? I'm not sure I followed it either.
Sure. Tracy,
There?
can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Tracy Farrow commented, caregiving is great for access to bases. I believe that is in association with the new regulation that came out 1 January, allowing caregivers and disabled veterans access to military bases, as well as the privileges of using the commissary exchange, bowling centers, things like that.
That's right. That is correct information.
Tracy Farrow has, I guess he has more information about that. Tracy?
Unmute my audio.
Hi, okay, I'm back. Sorry, with voiceover on the computer going, it makes it a little difficult.
Yeah.
To go a little deeper into what I was trying to say, I'm here in Biloxi at Keesler Air Force Base. They had the Trusted Traveler Program is what it was called. And as somebody who's authorized base access, I could vouch for my driver, okay? They have since canceled the Trusted Traveler Program here at Keesler, and it's up to each base if they want to continue it or not. So now what's required, if my neighbor wants to get on base, or my son who doesn't have an ID card, I can only get him a 30-day pass, and that's it. Which means that every time I go to the visitor, every time I go in, I go to the visitor center, go through line, and all of that. Even though I'm authorized 100%. So as a caregiver, if you get that caregiver letter, then you can go to the personnel flight or whatever they have it, they call it the post where you're at, and that can authorize your caregiver to get an ID card. That's especially critical for the folks that are service connected but not retired military. Okay, because retired military, your spouse would or a caregiver would automatically get that. But if you're not retired military, but you are authorized under this new program, it's only authorizing the veteran, not the caregiver. So by getting that caregiving letter done, it can get them an ID card so that they don't have to go through the craziness at the bases. And there's a good chance that the bases are all going to stop the Trusted Traveler Program. That's up in the air.
Mm. Well, that's nice that they're doing that now, because it is a hassle to continually renew that all the time.
Yeah. Now here at Kirtland Air Force Base, we can write a letter, and the caregiver takes it to Kirtland, and they give them what they call an agent pass.
Yeah.
Which allows the caregiver to shop and do the things that the veteran would normally do.
We're trying to get that to get the base to work with us like that here, and also to have it for our BRC staff, because the base is an excellent training facility for using the devices and all that stuff. And the base is really tightened up on security so tight that they've made it just about impossible now.
Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you.
We may take one more question. I think Patty's got her hand up again, right?
Okay.
Okay, we're good there. Actually, it's Ray again. We work at a team on this pass thing that they opened up to all honorably discharged veterans and their spouse. each base has a set of rules, and typically they'll give the veteran a permanent pass and their significant other, whoever, usually a wife, or it could be the reverse, an annual pass. But I think they're all playing with it still. Each base commander has a different set of options, as I understand it, that they can throw out there. So just pick a base that you would normally go to, and whatever their program is, and you get signed in. But they have to do a background for anybody who wasn't in the military, or some of them do. So they got a mixed bag of stuff out there. And quite frankly, I think it's cheaper to shop at Fred Meyer, but it's a good experience for those who need it and can use it.
Thank you, Ray.
I wanted to thank Kelly and Trudi and all the other presenters today for making this a
Yeah, so we still have, Trudi, Trudi and Kelly, you're still with us, right?
We are, yes.
Okay, all right. I just want to thank you very much. On behalf of BVA, on behalf of the board of directors, thank you so much for taking your time to prepare this. Like you said at the conventions, you're usually tied up with your own meetings, and so this has been a big treat for us. Usually, there have been times when the auxiliaries hosted a session like this, and I've gone to those because I've been really interested in the topic, and we really appreciate what you've shared with us today. We're also grateful for the auxiliary for helping to coordinate this. I think without Sandy and without Patty, this probably wouldn't have been able to be possible. But thank you so much for preparing. You handled the technology like pros, so much better than I can do it. And the screen sharing went really great. Thank you for sharing this with us today, and thanks for everybody that's participated and attended. Really appreciate the support that we've received up until now. We have a couple more sessions. Well, we have a session tomorrow and then 3 more on Thursday. Tomorrow you can tune in with the same link at 1 o'clock Eastern time. And it's what we have is called a virtual conference. And the session will feature the national president welcoming remarks, and the national chaplain with an invocation of remembrance, and some other VIP remarks, and a executive director state of the organization. So anything else from Trudi and Kelly before we sign off? Just thank you.
Thank you all for what you do and for attending and inviting us to speak to you.
Yes, thank you.
And Stuart, it's Don Overton. If I can just briefly, I want to also thank Kelly and Trudi for participating. I want to echo your sentiments to the auxiliary. They really did a phenomenal job of putting these sessions together, and everybody from the VA that participated. We will also have a presentation from the auxiliary president tomorrow during those sessions. So I just wanted to make sure that I pointed that out as well. And the last thing I wanted to say was to the individual earlier who felt as if we didn't fully address all of the unique needs of our member population. This is not a one and done for Blinded Veterans Association. And so thank you for pointing out the fact that we need to focus an additional session in the future on those unique needs of additional caregivers. We will make sure that we coordinate with subject matter experts to bring those needs of folks that are working with outside, whether it's contracted care, as well as the unique needs of our totally blind populations. That's the feedback we need so that we fully understand how best to serve your needs and bring those programs to you. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. Again, thank you to the auxiliary, phenomenal job, and to everybody at the Department of Veterans Affairs that does so much to care for those of us in the blind and visually impaired spectrum. So thank you, Stuart. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Don. All right. Thank you again, and we'll be seeing hope a lot of you tomorrow. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you.